In the aftermath of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, the world has been grappling with a multitude of questions, chief among them being the motivations behind this audacious act of aggression. As the conflict rages on, a diverse array of perspectives and narratives have emerged, each offering a unique lens through which to understand the complex web of factors that precipitated this seismic event. From the corridors of power in Moscow to the streets of Ukrainian cities, from the halls of Western think tanks to the living rooms of ordinary Russians, the debate over the rationale for the invasion has been fierce and multifaceted. In this article, we will delve into the most widely held opinions and narratives, drawing upon the insights of leading thinkers, policymakers, and analysts to shed light on the underlying currents that have shaped this conflict. The Kremlin's narrative. At the heart of the Kremlin's official justification for the invasion lies the stated goal of denazification and the protection of Russian-speaking populations in eastern Ukraine. In his address to the nation on February 24th, Russian President Vladimir Putin invoked these themes, stating, "I have decided to conduct a special military operation to protect people who have been subjected to bullying and genocide for the last 8 years. And for this, we will strive for the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine." This narrative, which portrays the Ukrainian government as a neo-Nazi regime oppressing ethnic Russians, has been a consistent refrain in Russian state media and official rhetoric. It taps into deep-seated historical grievances and the collective memory of the Soviet Union's sacrifices during World War II, resonating with a significant portion of the Russian populace. However, this narrative has been widely rejected by the international community and independent observers, who have found no credible evidence of genocide or widespread oppression of Russian speakers in Ukraine. Instead, many analysts view this justification as a pretext for territorial ambitions and a desire to reassert Russian influence in the region. The Western perspective. In stark contrast to the Kremlin's narrative, Western leaders and analysts have overwhelmingly condemned Russia's actions as an unprovoked act of aggression that violates international law and threatens the rules-based global order. In the immediate aftermath of the invasion, U.S. President Joe Biden declared, "President Putin has chosen a premeditated war that will bring a catastrophic loss of life and human suffering." Similarly, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stated, "President Putin is responsible for bringing war back to Europe." This perspective views Russia's actions as a blatant violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, driven by a desire to reassert Russian dominance in the region and undermine the post-Cold War security architecture in Europe. Think tanks and policy analysts have echoed these sentiments, with the Brookings Institution posing the question, does the West's Ukraine policy need a reality check? The Institute's scholars debated the implications of a potential Russian victory, warning of the consequences for the transatlantic alliance and the broader rules-based international order. The Russian public opinion. While the Kremlin's narrative has undoubtedly resonated with a significant portion of the Russian populace, public opinion on the invasion is far from monolithic. A closer examination reveals a complex tapestry of support, dissent, and nuanced perspectives. According to research by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, opinion polls consistently show that the majority of respondents support the actions of the Russian armed forces in Ukraine. However, the report also notes that the conflict has exacerbated existing divisions on a diverse array of issues, including support for the regime. One of the key beliefs underpinning support for the special operation is the perception that Russian-speaking populations in Ukraine were under threat, and that Russia was acting in a defensive capacity to protect its compatriots. As the report states, the majority of those who support the special operation explain their position in terms of protecting the Russian-speaking population in Ukraine. However, the report also highlights the existence of a significant minority that opposes the invasion, with some respondents expressing concerns about the economic and social consequences of the conflict. Additionally, the report notes that the overall patterns of attitudes towards the conflict are largely consistent with pre-existing divisions in Russian society, suggesting that the invasion has not necessarily consolidated public opinion, but rather exacerbated existing fault lines. The geopolitical chessboard. Beyond the official narratives in public opinion, many analysts and experts have sought to understand the invasion through the lens of geopolitical power dynamics and strategic calculations. In a report by the German Council on Foreign Relations, DGAP, the authors argue that the West, and in particular the EU and NATO, needs to invest in supporting Ukraine and its own security in the long term. The report suggests that only through negotiations with security guarantees can Ukraine achieve lasting peace, and that the West must make it clear to Putin's regime that it cannot win the war. Similarly, the International Institute for Strategic Studies, IISS, contends that to maximize its chances of victory, high levels of attrition should be privileged over mobility and direct attack. The Institute recommends that Western countries help Ukraine ramp up industrial production of capabilities that provide the greatest advantages in attritional warfare. These perspectives highlight the broader geopolitical implications of the conflict, with analysts and policymakers grappling with the question of how to counter Russian aggression while ensuring the long-term security and stability of Ukraine and the broader European continent. As the conflict in Ukraine rages on, it has become increasingly clear that the motivations and narratives surrounding the Russian invasion are multifaceted and complex. From the Kremlin's stated goals of denazification and protecting Russian speakers, to the Western condemnation of unprovoked aggression, from the nuanced tapestry of Russian public opinion, to the geopolitical calculations of power and influence. This conflict has exposed the deep fault lines that exist in the global order. It is a conflict that has challenged long-held assumptions about the inviolability of national sovereignty and the sanctity of international law, while also laying bare the fragility of the post-Cold War security architecture in Europe. As the world grapples with these seismic shifts, it is imperative that we continue to engage with the diverse perspectives and narratives that have emerged, seeking to understand the underlying currents that have shaped this conflict. For it is only through a nuanced and multifaceted understanding of the motivations and perspectives at play that we can hope to chart a path towards resolution and lasting peace. The road ahead will be long and arduous, but by embracing the complexity of this conflict and engaging in open and honest dialogue, we may yet find a way to navigate the treacherous waters of geopolitical upheaval and forge a new era of stability and cooperation.